Right, welcome back to the fish room. Today we're talking all about Mbunas. So if you're new to this and you're thinking of starting an Mbuna tank, do not go anywhere because I'm going to show you how to keep these fish and make sure that you don't end up with any dead ones. Right, so let's start with what Mbunas actually are. So they are one of the three main types that you're going to find in Lake Malawi. So you've got your haps, peacocks, and your Mbunas. Mbuna, I believe, is Chichewa for rockfish, aka territorial maniacs. Now, these are rock-dwelling fish, as the name suggests. So they have a completely different biotope and territory to things like your peacocks and your haps. There's hundreds of different species of these things, so they can be really hard to pinpoint on species when you're a beginner if you don't know what you're looking at. But they're a really cool territorial fish that hide out in little rock caves and dig little holes in the ground and little crevices, and they're just awesome and give you a really good colour pop in tanks as well. In fact, that colour pop is what makes these so attractive to beginners. So they're almost like freshwater fish with saltwater colours. So you get the electric blues, you get the bright yellows, no dyes, no editing, just pure evolution flexing. The females are mouth brooders like most African cichlids, which means they carry the eggs in the mouth. They raise the fry in the mouth until they're ready to spit and let them go into the real world, which is a heartwarming touch to the fish, considering they're absolutely psychotic. So that aside, they're tough, smart, they're full of colour, and they are very difficult for you to kill. The challenge is getting them not to kill each other. Right, let's talk about the Mbuna arena, the tank size. How big, ideally, do you want to get for a tank to keep these fish? My advice is always to get the biggest possible tank that your significant other will allow you to have in the house. But most places typically say 200 litres is the bare minimum, which I agree with to a degree if you're going to have only a very small colony of Mbunas. These things multiply fast. A lot of them grow quite big, so when you see them in shops, they're mostly sold at tiny juvenile sizes. They do pack on a lot of meat, they do get girthy and big. And when you start using up space, that is a big thing when it comes to Mbunas. So the more space you have, the less likely you're going to have aggression problems further down the line. When it comes to purchasing a tank, you're better to get more size along the floor than you are in height. What you don't want is a tall tank for these fish. It's not going to work. You want a lot of space along the bottom. This tank that I've got here is 3 foot long, 2 foot front to back. Now, me personally, I think that this is a little bit too small. So I think I'm really pushing it with this tank, and this is getting on I think this is 375 litres off the top of my head, which is bigger than the recommended size. And I haven't got a massive amount of Mbunas in here, but I know when they start getting bigger, there's going to be some problems. So set your stall out at a minimum of 3 feet long, keeping your numbers down to a minimum, so 10, 15 fish. If you've got a little bit more depth in it, you can probably get a few more fish in there until they start growing in a little bit bigger. But ideally, if you're thinking of a proper setup and you're going to be in it long term, 4 or 5 foot. Because one is going to give you more flexibility with regards to how many fish you can get and what types of fish you can get. 2, if you go too small, you're only going to wish you went bigger anyway. And then number 3 is obviously when you've got more space, You can build nicer structures, allow for more territories to be built, and that way you're going to get less aggression. Right, so next, what do you put in the tank? Well, simple answer is rocks. Lots of rocks. Now, these are rock-dwelling fish, so obviously the rock sculptures and everything is what they're used to, is what they've evolved to live in, so it is the best environment for them. Now, Mbunas, you'll often find them in Lake Malawi, all along the shorelines, high sunlight, lots of sand, rocks, sculptures, so it's the best environment for them. Now, I typically use Marco rocks or holy rocks when I'm building rock sculptures for Mbunas. The reason that I do that is, one, they have great pH stabilizing properties, so they're really good for your water parameters, especially when you're keeping these fish. We don't typically use the Marco rocks, holy rocks in any other fish tanks because of how it affects the pH, but it's perfect for Mbunas. The second reason I like to use those rocks is simply because they make really good sculptures. They're really easy to stack and build together, and they sort of naturally gel into one another and look like a really cohesive natural sculpture. Now, you can go about this either way. You can build a massive back wall of rocks up along the back of your tank, or you can do similar to what I've done here and build like a rock island in the middle. Me personally, I'm not a massive fan of rock walls along the back because they're nitrate factories. So what happens is you'll end up with, it creates dead spots in your tank, and we're not gonna, every time we do maintenance on the tank, take them rocks out and clean behind it. In fact, we're probably never gonna do it. So what I do is I build the rock sculpture in the middle like an island, and so I can get flow around all angles of that sculpture, so it keeps the tank clean. But by all means, you know, the back walls look amazing, the fish will love it. Personally, I just don't like doing it because it creates dead spots, but each to their own. Shouldn't cause you any real issues if you do, and the fish should absolutely love it anyway. As far as substrate goes, fine aragonite sand. Amazing pH boosting properties, so keeps your water parameters nice and stable. Looks really natural against the any Marco rock or holy rock that you're using as well. The ideal substrate for me would just be that fine aragonite sand. So I wouldn't do a mix like what I have in this system. The only reason I've done that mix is because I didn't have enough aragonite sand when I actually set this up. If I could go back and wait and do it again and just use the sand substrate, I would. But either of those things, as long as it's like aragonite based crushed coral, that is the ideal substrate to use for Mbunas. So when it comes to filtration, there's a couple of different options with Mbunas. I think the absolute bare minimum you want to be considering is maybe a relatively big hang-on back filter. The gold standard, my opinion, is the canister filter. So the Awase does an amazing job on this. Really good filtration, really good at water polishing. You've got loads of room in all them baskets for biological filtration. Mechanical media as well to keep your tank nice and clean. These fish are messy, they poo a lot, they feed very heavily, and they get pretty big as well. And usually, you know, we might tend to strategically overstock African cichlid tanks in general as well, because that's something that does help combat aggression to a degree. So it's important that you don't underestimate the power of filtration on these tanks. It's really important that you get one that is a relevant size for your water volume in your tank. You've got a nice amount of biological filtration in there, and something that really polishes it and keeps it clean as well. So let's talk stocking strategy. Now, this is the big one. This is the most important thing in this whole video. It's where most of the horror stories come from when it comes to Mbuna cichlids. It's where most mistakes are made, and I've been a victim of this as well. So Mbunas was one of my first tanks. I've gone out, filled it with multiple fish, without doing any research, looking at what I'm buying. Within a week, most of my fish had killed one another. Well, one or two of the fish had killed all of the others. And the reason for that is because Mbunas are so different. There's so many different species and they all have different temperaments and levels of aggression. Now, what happens is when you go into a fish shop, a lot of fish shops, when they sell African cichlids, sell them in mixed tanks. So you'll see tanks where it just says, they're just labeled as mixed Mbuna, five fish for 30 quid or whatever the pricing them at. Do not touch that unless you know exactly what you're looking at, because there's certain species of Mbuna that you really want to home in on and target, because some of them are an absolute nightmare. And I'll tell you some of the best ones to stock as a beginner and some of the ones that you want to avoid. So the first Mbuna that gets the green light is the yellow lab. So colourful, cheerful, minimal homicide, really easy to identify as well. So this bright yellow colours, sometimes with the black dorsal and anal fin, really easy to keep, really minimal aggression. So that's a definite Mbuna for beginners, that one. Another one is the rusty cichlid. So a nice purpley blue colour with these rusty brown and orange hints on them. Again, really mild, underrated Mbuna. Shows minimal aggression and also gets to a nice plump size as well. And so do the yellow lab. So both of those Mbunas, you know, you can get a lot out of them. They're peaceful, they're colourful, they get to a nice size. So they're a really good beginner Mbuna to put into your tank. Another great one is the yellowtail ATI. So a nice blue coloration, nice elegant fins with that yellow coloration on them as well. Minimal aggression. So again, a really easy Mbuna to keep. I mean, don't get me wrong, all of these fish can be territorial, and you can get the odd one that might go a bit AWOL. But these are the lowest risk Mbunas to start off with and get into your tank. And the really easy ones to identify as well. Another one is the Cynotilapia afra. So again, I like a bit of a showpiece fish. So if you're wanting something that's a little bit of a showstopper, a little bit of a centerpiece in your Mbuna display, this is definitely one to take a look at. Now, they are more aggressive than the previous ones that I've mentioned, but they are still relatively manageable. So you can still have a great experience as a beginner keeping these fish in your tank with those other fish. Another thing that's worth taking into consideration is overstocking. And that might sound wrong to begin with, but I like to call it, when it comes to African cichlids, strategic overstocking. So we're not overstocking so that it's going to crash our tank and destroy our water parameters. And obviously, if you do plan to overstock, build your way up to it. Don't do it all at once, because then you will crash your tank. But make sure you've got adequate filtration on there. Make sure you've got a well-cycled, mature tank before you, and build those numbers up gradually. Do not just dump 25 fish in a 55, 75 gallon tank and think that's going to be okay. You're going to win with Mbunas, because again, that's just going to have the opposite effect and it's going to kill everything. Ones that you need to avoid at all costs. Let's talk about the Melanochromis auratus, one of the golden devils of the African cichlid world. I have seen these fish beat up the biggest of haps, the biggest of Mbunas. They are absolute terrorists. So do not get this fish unless you're planning on having a species only tank or you're gonna breed that fish. Just stay well away from them, because they are absolutely insane. Why anybody would want to keep that fish is absolutely beyond me. This was one of the cichlids that I got in my beginner tank that was one of the ones that ended up destroying everything. They're an absolute nightmare. So that is the one I will warn everybody about. unless you're an experienced African cichlid keeper, or you have some sort of enormous tank where you can fit this fish into the rest of your colony, keep it away from any beginner setups, because it is an absolute nightmare and it will run riot in your tank. Another one I would avoid, sadly, I don't like to say this because I have had good experiences with them, but a lot of people haven't. And they're not ideal for beginners. They're a bit of a high risk fish, is the beautiful Pseudotropheus demersoni. Now, you might have heard me in my older videos when I've put these fish into the tank. They get on great in here at the moment and they don't show any aggression whatsoever, apart from the odd little chase. However, they have got some growing to do. And I think once these start packing on a little bit of size, they're going to cause a problem in this tank, which is why I keep reiterating the fact that I feel it might be a little bit too small and I may at some point need to extend and build something a little bit bigger for them. Now, they can be a little bit of a nightmare, but I've always had good experience with them. But the reason that I think I've had good experiences with these fish is because when I have had them in tanks, I've kept them as a species only tank. So I haven't had other types of Mbunas in there. I've just had sort of a colony of these demersoni, which are male, female. Another thing that's really hard to do with demersoni, especially if you're getting them at an early age, is get a decent male to female ratio, because they're so hard to tell apart. Both the males and the females have the same color patterns. So if you're a beginner and you're not really sure what you're looking at, it's really hard to try and get a ratio right to minimize your aggression. So as a beginner, avoid the demersoni. Another one is the Pseudotropheus elongatus, or anything that's labeled Jahani. Stay away from them. Not an abomination, but still quite an aggressive fish, and one that I have had problems with in the past as well. That was another one of the ones in my beginner tank that actually ended up killing a lot of fish. Really overly aggressive. It's not necessary to buy one. You can get that same sort of coloration in other more peaceful Mbunas. So from a beginner perspective, another fish that you want to really steer clear of and sort of opt in for something that's a little bit more peaceful. One rule of thumb I have heard from a lot of Mbuna enthusiasts is the more stripes the Mbuna has and the higher the density of the stripes on the body, the more attitude that fish is likely to have as a species. Now, I don't know how much truth is in that. If anybody else has heard that, let me know in the comments. I found myself using that as a rule of thumb when I have been purchasing Mbunas in the past. I mean, now I go more off experience because I've kept quite a few of them. But yeah, it's something that's always stuck with me in my head. So if it's something you've heard before, let me know in the comments. When it comes to maintenance, get yourself a weekly routine. When you're doing this weekly and consistently, you'll just see a massive difference in your fish, the water quality, how your tank looks. So it's 100% worth doing. What I recommend is a 30 to 40% water change per week on these tanks. Bi-weekly sand siphoning. So cleaning in between the rocks. Obviously, you don't have to take all the rocks out, but just create a little bit of a siphon on some of it, getting some of the nooks and crannies and siphon some of any uneaten food or poo out, because they build these little holes in the ground, stuff collects, food gets wasted and ends up collecting along the bottom, which is a nitrate or ammonia nitrite factory. So make sure you're doing bi-weekly sand siphons. And Mbunas do a lot of sand cleaning themselves, so they're turning over this substrate all the time with the natural behaviors. But it's really important to do it. Make sure you're doing, weekly water tests on these as well. If you do a water change, keep your eye on the pH especially. But yeah, early stages, beginner stages, Make sure you're testing for ammonias and nitrites. Make sure your tank's cycling correctly, because obviously, like I said earlier in the video, we do overstock these systems and we do put more fish in to fight aggression, but you've got to make sure that your beneficial bacteria in your tank is able to handle that bioload as you're building up your numbers inside your tank. So it's really important stuff. Stable water parameters equals stable fish, as unstable as these fish are. When it comes to feeding Mbunas, you want to keep it vegetable based, so spirulina, algae wafers, things like that. I just feed this Hikari plant-based sinking pellet, and then they can take a little tiny bit of protein as well. So I supplement it with these carnivore pellets, which is like an insect-based food. But the only reason I really put that in here is so that my Malawi hawks can pick it up. But they're all right taking it in small bits. What you don't want to do is feed a heavy protein-based diet. Do not put things like frozen bloodworm and stuff into a tank with Mbunas, because they're very susceptible to something called Malawi bloat, which is a life-threatening condition in the digestive tract of the fish. So if you're feeding a heavy protein-based diet to Mbunas, you're running a very high risk of them developing that. Bloat goes in conjunction with poor water parameters and things like that as well, but you're really running a risk if you're feeding them the wrong stuff. So that is one of the main reasons, you know, that I don't keep these with the peacocks and stuff, so I can keep the diet clean, how it's supposed to be. But anything plant-based, even blanched vegetables, bits of cucumber, nori sheets are perfect for these fish. As far as aggression management goes with these fish, a couple of the things I do in order to manage it: I provide a good number of cave structures, a lot of rocks, and then I stock quite heavily as well. So the combination of providing territories and then having multiple fish in there to disperse the aggression. Having overstocking doesn't stop aggression. What it does is it disperses the aggression between all of the fish. So instead of one fish getting singled out and picked on, you know, the aggression's being dispersed amongst the pack, and then you have less collateral damage per fish when things kick off. Another one we've already discussed, which is picking the right stock. Also, tank size matters, so more floor space, more length, more room for fish is going to reduce your aggression. Another good one, if push comes to shove, is getting your hands in the tank. Rearranging the rocks has a really good effect on aggression. Not a permanent one, but it can be a quick fix if you've got a particularly aggressive fish which is holding one spot in the tank. So what you do is change your rock sculpture around, rebuild it, you're resetting the territories in your tank, and then that fish won't be claiming the same spot anymore. So you're resetting the hierarchy to a degree. It's not a permanent fix by any means, but if you're wanting to stop some aggression quick and buy yourself some time, it's a good thing to do. So the 5 most common mistakes where people go wrong with these fish. Number 1 is tank size. People get the tank sizes wrong. They don't get one big enough and they put too many Mbunas in it, which results in disaster. Number 2 is providing too fewer hiding spots in the tank as well. So minimal cave structures, which isn't providing any hiding places. If fish get stressed and they can't hide, they will die. Another common mistake, number 3, is people feeding these fish wrong. So they'll feed them a high protein diet, bloodworms, high protein pellets. Make sure you don't do that. That will have a negative effect on these fish very quick, and is one of the main reasons why I don't mix my Mbunas with my peacocks and haps, because I know the devastating effect that high protein diet can actually have on Mbunas, and they're really hard to target feed when they're mixed in with peacocks and haps as well. So that is a big one for me. Number 4 is just mixing random Mbunas. So we've discussed it already. I've given you some good ones to aim for to start up a beginner system. Ones that are minimal risk and going to give you low chances of death. So do your research, have a look online. There's loads of information about Mbunas. Make sure you're going into a shop, you know what you're looking at and you're buying the right one. Try and stay away from mixed Mbuna displays. So you don't want to just dive into a mixed tank, because then you end up picking something up that you don't know what it is. So it's not worth it. Protect your money, protect your investment, protect your fish, and have a look at some peaceful ones online, especially the ones I've already suggested in the video. And then finally, don't believe everything the fish shop tells you, unless it's a really reputable shop. There's some great shops out there, but what I mean is you go into places like Pets at Home, which is similar to PetSmart or whatever, Petco or whatever it is in the US. Some of these people don't know what they're talking about. Get yourself into a renowned fish shop that really cares about the fish. They know a lot. They've got a lot of information about them. Follow their advice, but don't believe everything that every fish shop tells you. Do your own research. Go into the shop ready and make sure you know what you're buying. Right, so Mbunas are beauty, drama, chaos, all rolled into one. But don't let it intimidate you. I mean, these fish are well worth it. If you follow the rules correctly, you do your research, you invest a little bit of time in your scape and your tank size, then once you find the harmony with these fish and you get a good tank set up, they really are hypnotic to watch. So you get all the colours. This tank here, although I know, when these Demosonis start filling in a little bit, I'm probably going to run into a couple of aggression issues. I may need to increase the size or turn it into a species only display. But at the moment, everything's working. It's really is harmony in there. I've not had any dead Mbunas because I've tried to go for the more peaceful species like the Mbuna Cichlids, the yellow labs, and it's all coming together and gelling really nicely. So really worth it, worth the investment, worth just doing a little bit of research on. And if you're a beginner watching the video, I hope this helps. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you found it useful, give it a like, and good luck with your Mbuna tank.